Video blog.
Hey there, this is Tim from Twice Circled, and welcome to episode 4 of the official Big Pharma video blog. Now today's episode will take a slightly different format to normal. It's a question and answer episode, so I'm going to go through a number of questions that I've collated from various sources, mainly from the Twice Circled blog. And I'll be answering those questions. The gameplay footage you can see rolling in the background is pre-recorded, so I recorded that before recording this audio over the top. But hopefully I can get some of your questions answered. So without further ado, let's start with a question. First up, Dan asks, will you spend money on marketing the drugs like the real pharmaceutical companies? Now my current thinking when it comes to marketing is to use a system based around clinical trials. So clinical trials are when pharmaceutical companies ask a group of researchers to do a test study where they gather a load of participants, give them the drug produced by the pharmaceutical company, and try to measure whether that drug has a desired effect, has whatever effect that the drug is trying to, the pharmaceutical company claims their drug has. So, for example, it might be an antidepressant, and then they'll get maybe half a group of participants to take the branded antidepressant pill, and then the other half might take a placebo, and then they're going to see if the half that take the branded pill have a report feeling less depressed on average than the people taking the placebo. And so you'll be able to run these same sort of clinical trials as in Big Pharma. So you'll choose which drug you want to run the trial on, and then you'll set the trial parameters, and you'll be able to choose which researcher runs the trial, and each researcher will have different things attached to them. So for example, you might have a sloppy researcher whose results are more prone to variance. You might have another researcher who's very, very dedicated and doesn't make mistakes, but is maybe more expensive, and those results will have less variance. And then you've also got another parameter, which is going to be how open the researcher is to certain clauses. And specifically, I'm talking about gagging clauses. So some researchers might be open to things in a contract, for example, which say that you get final say on whether the results are published, or you get to final edit on the report, which means maybe you could show your drugs in a more positive light than if the researcher wrote it independently. And so there's going to be this toss-up here. I mean, you can go very straight and narrow and not try and put any of those clauses in a contract. And you know, if you've got a really good drug, then that's probably your best bet, because the results will be very close to the real ones. But if you've got maybe a less effective drug, you could perhaps go with someone who's a bit sloppier, so there's a bit more variance in the results, and also put in a gagging clause. So if the results kind of show your drug off to be a bit bad, then you could always just discard those, you know, and not publish them. So that's the way the marketing mechanic will work in this game. It's not just going to be advertising, because I think that's less interesting, and it's also banned in some countries. In America, you could advertise pharmaceuticals, but you can't in Europe and the UK. So, but I actually, the main reason is because I think the clinical trial system will be really interesting. There'll be a lot of interesting strategies there. Okay, next question. We had a couple about patents. Actually, we have a second one from Dan, who asks, will you be able to sue a competitor if they breach your patent? And the answer to this is no. The way patents are going to work in the game is they're going to be unbreachable. So it will be impossible for you to breach your competitor's patents and vice versa. I think this is just a simpler system. You could make it so you could breach, and then if you notice that person's breaching, then you sue them. I just think it's a bit complicated. I think for a game, you know, let's just say patents are ironclad. If you have one, no one can produce that drug. But, kind of follow-on question, LTK asks, will it be possible to research your competitor's products and get around their patents? So this is where it gets a bit interesting, is yes, when you have a patent, it will be for a particular molecule. Particular set of molecules. So if you've been watching the video blogs, you'll know that each drug has 4 little molecules attached to it in a little square. Now, if all 4 of those are exactly the same in one drug to another, they are the same drug for all intensive purposes and are covered by the same patent. But if just one of those molecules is different, then that's not the case. So you will be able to get round your competitors' patents unless they've been very diligent and they've created every single permutation of a particular cure that is currently available and patented all of them. But that will be expensive, and you'll be having to make the same sort of strategic decision. Do you want to be diligent and patent everything, or do you just want to patent the one that you're happening to sell? And there's actually a third question from Dan, thank you for all the questions, who asks, will you face fines as a company if you bend the rules? This is actually interesting. I think this is probably most applicable to the kind of clinical trial system I was talking about earlier. There will be a chance, if you sweep the kind of, if you have a trial and you choose to not publish it, and this trial showed that your drug had negative side effects, then if there is if it blows up and someone has a very kind of serious condition resulting from taking one of your drugs, then there'll be kind of a media storm. Your company will take a hit to its reputation. There will be a global value called reputation attached to your company. There'll also be specific brand values attached to each particular product you're selling. So those will take a hit anyway. They'll take an even bigger hit if it's uncovered that you actually gagged a clinical trial and stopped the results from being published. So that is a risk you have to be aware of, and you need to think carefully whether you want to take that risk. Brennan asks, will you have to research each molecule before you can see what reactions it has? Now this was actually a follow-up kind of question to something else he was asking about, because one of the things you might have noticed if you've been watching my videos is you can't see what cures are available, what curative property a molecule has until you've made that molecule at the moment. When you have say you're aiming to get up to an amide level 2 molecule, you have to actually create that amide level 2 before you can see what it cures, which is a bit of a problem. And so really the answer is no, you won't have to research each molecule before you can see what reactions it has. You'll be able to see all of those on a separate tab called the Cures tab, which you'll probably be able to see in the game. In fact, you can see it right now, which hasn't been implemented yet, but it's the next thing I need to implement. And on this Cures tab, it's going to be bifunctional. It's going to firstly show all of the reactions that you can make happen to upgrade the levels of your cures. And it will show you which machines you need to use, at what concentrations they need to go off, what other things need to be there to catalyze the reactions. But it will have a second function, which is it will show the current demand for each cure. And so this is kind of going to be a very important overview tab. You almost might want to go to this one first, see what demand there is, then go to your ingredients tab and work out what you can make. You know, can you create that cure for Ebola, which is in huge demand at the moment? And then finally you'll go down to the production tab and actually make it happen. So there'll be kind of stages, there'll be planning, and that's something I very much kind of am going for with this game. I want it to be more about strategic decision making than Twitch kind of reaction timing, which so many strategy games are about these days. And so yeah, there will be, you know, you'll really want to take some time to think about what's going to give you the best profit, how you're going to make it, and you know, whether you even can. I'd like to kind of follow up this question, even though it's not quite what Brennan was asking. He was asking about whether you have to research molecules before you can see what reactions they have. There is another kind of side thing here, which is, do you have to research your ingredients before you know what molecules they have? And the answer to this one is yes. So when you send out your team to a region to explore and they find an ingredient, a promising ingredient, you'll then have to actually test the ingredient to find out what molecules it has attached to it. And it will start off, you'll probably be able to see how many molecules it has, but you won't be able to see what they are. They'll just be question marks. And so you'll have to hire testers to find these things out. And what's interesting is, regardless of whether you've found out what these molecules are or not, you will have to, they'll still be active. So you might find a good thing and you start working on upgrading that good molecule, and you know, without you knowing, there might be a negative side effect kind of attached, and you might even by accident upgrade that negative side effect, so it's a higher level side effect and so more damaging, and you'll get all the way to kind of selling it and you won't realize that it's got this bad side effect attached. So it's going to be kind of another risk reward thing. Do you want to be diligent and test all of your ingredients very carefully? Or are you going to try and kind of get away with not being as diligent? And again, if you're not diligent, you're taking a risk and it might blow up in your face, but it's cheaper. Okay, the Norwegian asks, love that name, will there be any form of capital market included in the game? For example, loans, stock, acquisitions. By acquisitions he means acquiring either portions of or entire businesses owned by your competitors. So the answers go basically like this. Loans, absolutely, there will be in the game. It's going to be a really important part of the game, actually. On the harder difficulties, you're not even going to start with any cash. You're only going to start with a loan. And so you need to make that money start working for you from day one, otherwise you're paying interest on it. Stock, it's something I'll think about. I've got to admit, like, I did enjoy it in games like Capitalism 2 I've played. You have things like stock, and you can kind of do clever things. You have like a personal account and your company account, and you can kind of start a company, and then when the price starts kind of going up, you can kind of sell off the stock that you own personally, and then invest that in a new company and stuff like that, which is kind of fun. But here's the big but: it's not really what Big Pharma is about. Big Pharma is much more on the level of, say, Transport Tycoon, where it's got a bit more micromanaging, it's got a bit more kind of laying out lines and all that kind of satisfying stuff. And it's, it's about creating pharmaceuticals at the end of the day. It's not a game about financial markets and playing the stock market. I'd rather, I'm interested in those topics, but I'd probably rather create a completely separate game all about trading on the stock market, rather than kind of try and put those stuff into Big Pharma. So I'm not sure if I do have an option to sell stock in your company to the public and to raise funds that way, it will be very simplified. It will be based on the profit you made last year with a kind of sensible profit over earnings to kind of price over earnings to kind of work out what your company valuation is, and then just kind of say you can raise a certain amount. I'm not really sure what the downside would be to selling your stock as well. You lower the stock value, but you have more money to work with. Maybe your shareholders wouldn't be happy. I'm just kind of thinking as I'm going along here. I'm not sure. It'd have to be a really tight mechanic. It'd have to work really well if I did use it. And acquisitions, I'm afraid, are completely off the table. It's just way beyond the scope of the game that I'm trying to create here. So I'm sorry about that. Okay, last couple of questions now. Aaron asks, will there be opportunities to make drugs of the non-medical variety? The answer to this, sadly, is no. It would require a very different marketplace. Sorry, I should go into... Aaron goes on to explain that by non-medical, he means kind of legal highs and that sort of thing. It would need a very different marketplace. You'd have to start seeing side effects as good things. Like if a hallucination side effect was attached to a drug, suddenly that gives it a plus value if you're trying to sell it as a legal high? I don't know. It's a bit random. It doesn't feel tight to me, and I think it might really imbalance the game. It'd be very difficult to make it work in a fun way. So probably not. Final question now, a bit of a fun one to finish. Addy asks, how about hilarious names for the end products? Now, that will definitely be in the game, I'm happy to say. But I'm not going to be coming up with the hilarious names. You guys are. So every time you have a new product, the first time you try and sell it, before it actually sells, as it enters the socket, it will sit in that socket and it won't sell, but a little dialogue will come up and it says, name your product. And you won't be able to sell anything until you name it, and you can call it anything you want. So maybe if it's something that cures your cold, I think there's one that's like you could have a soothes cold symptoms, and maybe it also eases your migraine, then you could call that, I don't know, pain away, or I'm not even sure. Or you could be very silly if you want to, and you could, if you know that your product has a side effect which causes flatulence, then you could call them fart pills if you wanted to, even though people aren't buying it for the side effect. Now the reason I'm doing this is basically names won't have any gameplay effect in the game. It's going to be completely for you, and you can have your own fun with that. And it's kind of nicer that way. If I made you call them fart pills, everyone would be like, oh, that's not funny. But if you guys do it yourself, it kind of makes it more funny. So yes, you will be able to name your drugs, and you can call them. You can be as serious or hilarious as you like. Okay, that just about wraps up this video blog episode. Thank you for your questions. I hope you found the answers interesting. Please keep the questions coming. I love answering them. The best place is the blog page that goes along with this video, or you can leave it in the YouTube comments. That also works. Alright, well thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time with the next episode of the video blog. Bye bye.